So what's new as of this week? Last week you had the town hall, which I went down there for, and it seemed to me to be very successful, even though the room wasn't packed. I know you had people on Zoom listening in, and there was just a lot of powerful information and strong words. What's going on in the continuation of the events here?
Well, the most immediate is that tomorrow the California Coastal Commission begins their March meeting in Santa Cruz. My colleague Ed Mitchell, another volunteer, is going to be there with a group of citizens presenting the story of what's happened um, to our community because of this fire. We've been learning that the California Coastal Commission was not involved in the decision for this plant to open. It appears that that happened because this predated the 2022 law, which really inserts the state to a greater degree into safety and approval requirements for these BESS facilities. And at this point, the California Energy Commission is approving generally several, up to a dozen or more, these BESS plants, BESS facilities every month with their meetings. I
Wow.
can get around to that in a minute.
Mm.
But in terms of the Moss Landing facility, that was approved by the County Planning Commission. The Board of Supervisors didn't look at it. The state signed off on a variety of documents that said that it was all good with them, like the uh, the highway folks and others saying that they had no problem with the plan. And it looks like it only rose to the Planning Commission level here in Monterey because it was really just changing out equipment. The space was already built, it was already there, been there since the 50s. So the Coastal Commission wasn't involved, but it is within their jurisdiction geographically. So we're going to be there inside their meeting. We're not on the agenda. The plant is not on the Coastal Commission's agenda. But we're going to be there asking for their help. We're assuming that they could potentially play a role in the rebuild or in the criteria that are required around restarting the plant. We may be wrong about that. Right now, the position appears to be that they don't want anything to do with this. But our story is that we believe that you can help us to protect this community by asserting some level of authority that we think that you can assert, we hope you can, in requiring certain performance criteria of the operator. So we're going to be there tomorrow making that argument at 9 a.m. in Santa Cruz. Then on Thursday, we're going to have a direct action at the same location outside at 8 a.m. in which members of the community will gather and loudly
Where
ask.
where is that going to be?
That's at the Courtyard Marriott. That's right on Riverside Street, right next to the boardwalk.
This is a
About a
Coastal
block,
Commission meeting. Did I? Yeah.
about a block from the boardwalk amusement park.
Okay.
There's on the main drag coming
Got
over to
it.
the boardwalk from downtown Santa Cruz on Ocean Street.
Hmm.
You work your way down to the boardwalk and you go right past this
Well.
large Marriott courtyard, and that's where they're holding their meetings.
Okay.
So we will be outside on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Trying to make a little bit of noise and get the press there covering that story of how our community doesn't want to see these plants opening if they're going to burn. Santa Cruz County right now has been put on notice by the California Energy Commission that they're expected to approve 3 plants in the 270-day window that's there. The county has not done that yet, but once the Energy Commission says that they want to see a plant built, the counties have about 270 days to respond in a way. I don't know what the mechanism is that can prevent that, but generally it doesn't sound like they have a lot of options once that clock starts ticking. So I believe that's the case with these 3 smaller facilities that have been proposed for Santa Cruz County. And since Moss Landing burned, people are very concerned about that. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but apparently what's happening with the state, in addition to these very large facilities, for example, they're trying to get Morro Bay approved for a larger plant than we have here at Moss Landing.
Hmm.
In
Wow.
addition to that, part of the plan is to install small neighborhood BESS facilities, battery energy storage system facilities, and they involve putting a rack of batteries inside of shipping containers effectively,
Mhm.
and then having them collect the power from the surrounding solar uh, on rooftops on homes and then push it into these smaller facilities that then collect it and then have it right there in that community to push back out at night. Makes a lot of sense on the face of it. The difficulty is that they can still burn. The batteries that are being used now are more stable, but my understanding from the materials that I'm receiving from experts literally around the world is that they only they only give you a few more degrees of tolerance before they also could have the potential of burning. Um, and this new formulation is more toxic than what came out of Moss Landing. So for all these reasons, even though the Coastal Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over most of the state, if they can establish some requirements for the plant that has burned, it might start setting a new kind of type of oversight standard that's been apparently absent to date.
I'm aware of not only how the Coastal Commission is being, to some degree, marginalized by our own state lately. Uh, I'm thinking of the housing laws that are coming up and basically uh, taking away authority for the Coastal Commission. You have that energy going, and now I just recently saw that federal President Trump has somehow indicated that he thinks that the California Coastal Commission is also a force of blocking the progress or whatever. I think both times the environment is being the victim from either the state or from the federal right now. Or what are you thinking there?
I think that the state has a lot of political capital tied up in this approach to trying to decarbonize, and I think there's a logic to that. Personally speaking,
Mm,
I'm a big advocate for us reducing our carbon footprint. That
right.
said, these things can catch on fire. When they do, a lot of really gross and toxic and nasty stuff comes out. The
Mm,
information we're getting from other sources and the science is there backing it up. There's, I can tell I'm not a scientist. I just play when I'm on TV, but the science looks like what comes out of these plants when they burn is incredibly toxic to life.
mhm,
The metals that came out of Moss Landing appear to have been essentially vaporized but not destroyed, becoming nanoparticles
mhm.
that people were breathing in. That has long-term, highly toxic health consequences, and we don't even know we're doing it, other than the fact that we don't feel good. The hexafluorine gas, which the EPA has been testing for ever since, a couple of funny things about that. First off, it's lighter than air, so it goes up. It doesn't come down like a blanket and doesn't apparently read by those machines that are around the plant on the ground because it's going up. So what happens to it when it goes up? Well, in the case of the fire, it went up and it hit the marine layer. And once the chemistry of the marine layer, which involves sea salts, acts with the hexafluorine, it creates a new chemistry. And that is, I think it's hydrofluoric acid, I think I said that correctly, and hydrochloric acid, which are very caustic. So why isn't everybody here getting sick? Well, it's a big air up there, but people who are, it seems from what we're learning from all the people who are sick, is that there's a common theme of immunocompromised, bronchial issues, other issues that we came familiar with during COVID, where people were getting sick and it was hitting the most vulnerable. Well, it seems like that is repeating itself here. So we have maybe 100,000 people in the area where this plume spread between Marina and North Salinas, all the way up to southern part of Santa Cruz County, with some getting across the bay into parts of Santa Cruz County, Santa Cruz proper, Capitola area. But nonetheless, it looks like um, these emissions are impacting the most vulnerable. My wife was in the Air Force. She was stationed abroad periodically. She was near the burn pits. She's been having immunity issues ever since, but nothing like what she's encountering now. She's 50. She's never had breathing problems. She struggles to breathe now. She's an example of what's happening to these folks that are, um, that are the most vulnerable when they come into contact with whatever's in the air. And it's continuing to happen. The plant's rubble has not been touched. There's a wall that's destabilized, 50 feet high, that's part of the building. The building was the size of 3 football fields, packed full of batteries, by the way. And so there's a wall that's destabilized and leaning, and they need to get that stabilized before they can begin to remove the rubble. Well, we've heard that the rubble is very hot underneath. There's still batteries there. We don't know the degree to which it's smoldering. We're just told that the EPA is not registering any gas, but that doesn't tell us whether or not, it's coming out and lifting up into the air still in smaller quantities. So what we have is a pile of rubble that's still hot, still probably emitting gases. We're being told that one particular gas is not being read in the places where it probably isn't actually occurring. And they can't move that rubble until they've stabilized that wall, which could be months. That's what I'm being told by a member of the Board of Supervisors. And it seems like a fairly accurate evaluation because of the engineering that's required.
Do we know if they have indeed created some type of berm around it at this point in time?
They have berms. I don't know the technicality of how they're removing water. The company keeps sending out reassuring. I'm sorry, we need to pause this.
Okay, sure. We can pause it. Okay.
So, I don't know. There are existing holding areas there on site. The company spokespeople will pop up periodically. They did so in the last 24 hours, I guess. They say that the testing continues to be negative and everything's fine, and that they're monitoring the pile, and that the remediation, will begin as soon as it can. I've read that there are some sort of water holding areas there. They said that they've got water that's been tested and it's not toxic, but that out of an abundance of caution, they'll dispose of it in a properly, handled way. The company's the primary source of information on all this. The company's one that caused the problem. They're the ones that's putting out the information. They keep citing authorities that are testing. We're not really hearing directly from them. I don't know why, but we are hearing periodically from the company saying that everybody else is saying everything's fine. So I don't know. What we do know, and they did say this in the most recent release that I saw, is that this could catch on fire again because it isn't able to be enclosed in a way that prevents water from hitting it, and water is one of the triggers for the fire. So it's very possible that we'll continue to have fires. They're not addressing smoldering. They're just saying that testing shows that the numbers are within, EPA allowable levels. I did speak to an expert, a toxicologist, who's the chief scientist for a small environmental outfit outside of DC, and he said the government does not have any baseline, any recommendations when you have all these chemistries combining, right? They'll test for one thing in the environment or one thing or another thing, but they don't have any numbers that say when all these things come out together, this is what it means. Right?
Nobody knows, I suppose.
So we know that all these things were in these batteries, and we just don't know their impact on health, other than the fact that a lot of people are sick and still sick.
Do we have numbers of the amount of people who have checked in with the website regarding symptoms?
Well, I haven't had time to go count the thousands of entries and determine which are repeats and which are new.
Wow.
If you do, that'd be great. I could really use help with that. There are thousands of entries.
Yeah.
There are definitely lots of people that are entering repeatedly.
All right.
There are a lot of people that are observing and commenting upon what we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a count on the number of individual reports. I just know that there are, at this point, maybe over 10,000 entries at that site in the last, 7 weeks.
Wow. Wow. This is just a short talk with Brian. The subject is really deep, and you can go in so many different directions in the exploration. I know that the people in the industry are using this as a learning experience. They are claiming that they're going to remedy everything. Everything will now be different from now on. But
We'll,
as you are trying to keep in front of people's eyes here, on behalf of your own community as well as, I think, on behalf of all of the country or the planet or California for sure, that we really need to examine this. And I think there was some quote from either your website or something, but the question was, at what level does our current, what we've bought into is sustainable? Are we resisting examining it? Are we actually, do we want to ignore this because it might conflict with our current vision? And
I've learned a lot over the last 2 months, Guy.
yeah,
A lot. And I'm very concerned about what we're doing to our environment through carbon emissions, the rate at which global warming seems to be accelerating, extreme weather seems to be accelerating. I'm very concerned about that. We're seeing it all the time in the impacts. I was a farmer in Virginia. I had a vineyard and a winery. And my 30 acres of vines and my winery were increasingly being subjected to extreme weather events. And it was clear that seems clear to me that's happening. And it seems to me, my conclusion, it is related to carbon. But you can't have these plants burning up, and they are. These facilities are burning up. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was 23, in South Korea, I've learned that there was a battery production plant. It burned up so fast it killed 23 people, just like that, inside the plant. I'm talking to people literally from around the world now who are trying to slow down the march towards these facilities in all different sizes and locations. And Moss Landing has become something of a focal point for their efforts. In some ways, it seems that the people around the world in this space are more aware of what's happened here than people here. But the challenge is the same. There's a commitment, a very valid commitment to trying to decarbonize. But at the heart of the solution is what appears to be something that resembles a ticking time bomb. I know they're probably working on safe chemistry. I hope they are. I hear that they are. I don't know that it's deployed yet. I hope it gets deployed soon, but that it's really understood. It seems we got the cart before the horse in some ways, and it seems that these companies, which are of course profit-based, that's the world we live in, are racing towards something because it's very profitable, it seems, that hasn't completely been worked out and thought through. I can't say empirically that some of these companies are not being completely honest about the bill of goods they're selling to local communities when these plants are being promoted. There is indications that in some instances that may be happening. And when you think of Monterey County, it's an agricultural community with a dose of pretty healthy dose of tourism. There's some industry here. There's a lot of industrial ag here. But the people who run this county are really good people who live here, and they're sometimes mom and pops and farmers, right? We don't have necessarily technical people who are making decisions about whether or not to take in arguably the largest industrial facility that's ever been placed here. I mean, Moss Landing was a big industrial facility, but it was pretty much low tech. And here this wonderful idea came in, and we have this solution, and it's high tech, and we'll just change some things out inside this giant building, and everything will be great. You'll get some tax dollars. And that was taken to a planning commission, populated by farmers and residents and business owners and moms and pops. With the information they had, they made what they thought was a reasonable decision. And now we're living with the consequences. But the companies, they know what they're bringing to us. They know the risks. I know that I understand from what I've been provided I haven't read it through directly, so I can only say that this is my understanding, that Vistra, the company that operated this plant, said that the worst case scenario was a 1-day burn of one rack of batteries as part of their application. So this community was not prepared for anything really much beyond that. And we went well beyond that.
And that is the case always. There's so much the momentum of the goal, as you say, to decarbonize is very powerful, very strong. It's locked in with most of, I think, people who have looked at the situation on the planet, and the guarantees or this momentum is very hard to check, very hard for somebody in the governmental position to, I think, pause it, unless maybe what you're doing and what other people are doing, and perhaps because of what you're doing, what's going on in Santa Cruz and Monterey, that we can give strength to the people who have to make these decisions to look deeper.
So, Never Again Moss Landing, our new website, our website's been reskinned. We've got a lot going on there. We've got an archive that I'm trying to get populated with all my free time. And I have people helping, but mostly it's me right now because we're figuring out how to do this and make it work, and then we'll get other people involved. There's probably at least 100, 150 files on my desktop that I'm trying to get loaded up there so it can become a central clearinghouse. But the lack of knowledge about this technology, at least in our communities, and it seems among our politicians and our officials, seems pretty significant. The lack of support in state resources, I think, has been, well, you can use unfortunate or appalling, depending upon your perspective. This community is attempting to find solutions, and they're not forthcoming. I'm pretty plugged in to a lot of things that are happening, not by choice, and kind of on our own. And I think that sucks. I think that this community has been hit really hard. A lot of vulnerable people have been damaged. There's environmental consequences that I think are going to last a long time. I'm not talking weeks or months. And I'm looking around, I'm not seeing a lot of help. Not seeing much help at all. And
You're saying that looking for the people who are in the position to make a change to help, or what do you say, that just in general, it's sort of like a...
State resources on the ground. They're in LA, and I understand why they're in LA. They're not here.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't have 1,000 homes that burn.
Right.
But we got 1,000 people that are sick. And
Yeah.
they can't get out.
Yeah.
It's not a hard number. I'm just picking a number, but it's probably low based upon the feedback we're getting on Facebook and online, and so it seems to me that it'd be good for the state to be here helping the county. County resources are limited. We're an agricultural county.
Right.
Our fire department drove out 5 minutes later. They couldn't do anything about this fire. It wasn't supposed to happen. That's what the company said.
That is the key, and that'll be the key coming up for the next generation. It will, it's not supposed to happen. We can't 100% guarantee it, but we've made so much, and that's the gambles of our civilization, I guess.
Yeah. And the story is it won't happen again because it's all better. Well, you know what? Mm-hmm. More and more people aren't believing that.
Right.
Because they're not seeing the support and the presence of our authorities, which allows us to believe that they care. Because if they show us they care, then we can actually believe them. And I think that the problem with the approach that seems to be in place in response to this disaster is that through disorganization or intent, the absence of support for this community is undermining people's faith that there is a genuine effort to do something about this. There's a genuine understanding of what this means, that there's a valid reason to continue to believe that the people who made this possible through inattention or design give a damn. And I didn't start there 2 months ago. I've worked with folks in the government, a lot of my friends in the government, and I have great respect for them and what they do and how they do it and why they do it. But I'm pretty disappointed in this instance, and I'm still waiting for proof that somebody in Sacramento gives a damn about what's happened.
Well, I'm going to have to wrap it up, Brian. I think it's very, I think we are at that point where the bucket that is empty needs to become full. And there's old Zen saying, the full bucket becomes empty, the empty bucket becomes full. We're kind of empty in it right now, and I think it's symbolic that it's all about power and the population and humans, and we really need to something has to change of how power is experienced or controlled, or of the people themselves. Anyways, further discussions up ahead. You want to wrap it up with a...
This is how I fill my bucket. My son, who's 7, did this, and I brought it to my office at our home that we're moving out of.
Yeah.
While I'm doing these interviews, I play with it, and as I'm talking, I'm thinking about my son, who's my resilience. And that's why I've been playing with this child's toy, speaking with you. Thanks for asking about what's going on here. I appreciate it.
Well, that's and that's really what it's all about. We are part of, an inheritance chain, and whatever inheritance that what has been working and what is not working with this, what we pass on in life in our short time is important, that we do everything humanly possible for the next generation, and stand up and fulfilled ourselves to our best of our abilities. So, anyways, Brian, we'll be talking again, I expect, and look forward to. All right, thank you, and cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
There's not much more to say, people. Thank you for watching this little video, and stay tuned for more. There's a lot going on in this world, and it's all this step-by-step process.